And the people who haven't experienced their reality getting dissolved think that a person who's doing that is kind of foolish sometimes. You know what I mean?
Or crazy.
Or crazy. I knew these scientists who were, I went to a party where there was a scientist who was studying computer vision. And so he was interested in seeing. And so he was doing research on how the human being sees, the neurology of it, how the wiring is in our heads, you know, how we can see with our eyes. And he said it was interesting that this fellow had determined that only 4% of what we experience as a visual experience actually comes from our eyes. So 96% happens as sort of data processing internally. That's an interesting one. 96% of what you're seeing right now is created within you that isn't attached to the sort of external world out there. Only 4% of it is that. That's kind of an odd thing. We actually were working on the wiring, you know, in our brains, and came up with this. Now, I don't know if this is true. It's sort of hearsay. But I kind of understand it as a model. It's really an interesting model that when you see something with your eyes, only a very small part of it is a connection with the world, and the rest is what we manufacture internally. So that's an interesting subject. That means, how is that being manufactured internally? How accurate is it? And what things are being added to the experience that we're having right now? What's being added and overlaid in our mind's eye, so to speak, so that what we experience is really a combination of our past, our memories, our habits, our brain physiology, our chemistry, our hormones, all those things, and how much of it is being connected to an actuality. That's really a puzzle when you think about it. How it makes you wonder, what is my reality? Because you see, there's this old saying, Hindu saying, that is like if a thief sees someone coming down the road, all he sees is that person's pockets. But a sage may see a divine being coming. But it's the same reality seen two different ways, right? So the enlightenment process has to do with sorting out that fundamental act of perceiving the reality, of going for the truth of it. And with an understanding that we see kind of what we want to see, or what we're programmed to see, or what we habitually see, things like that. And, well, what's the truth of it? Where is reality? Dzogchen, which is the deepest Buddhist sect or philosophy, I guess it is. And they say, well, there's this I consciousness, okay? And
as in I, me?
No, as an eyeball.
As in the eyes.
As
Okay.
in the eye.
As in sight.
As that your sight gives you a certain I consciousness. And you could do that right now, just pure I consciousness, which is just attending to what your eyes do at this moment, right? Then there's what they call the sixth consciousness, which is what overlays that with things like, I like it, I don't like it, it's good or it's bad.
Aren't those already established perceptions, though, that are within you to be able to get to that point? I like it, I don't like it,
Clearly, what we do is we project those onto the thing, and we forget that it's something that's internally created and then put out there, and then we see it as one thing. So then, for instance, you say, well, this kind of car is a certain way, and that's a mixture of the perception of a physical object plus a lot of attitudes, right? That were programmed by advertising and by personal experience and whatever. And I think we just forget how much we're contributing to that experience of what we see, especially in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What we see is, that was real to you,
Mm-hmm.
is that we project something about ourselves onto that other. And so what we're seeing is a reflection of our own minds, in a sense, in part. We're seeing them to some degree, but we're also seeing a reflection of our own minds. We're creating that reality between us and this other individual. And that means that you could have a thing, one person, not you personally, but a person could have a thing where everybody who looks that way, I don't want to have anything to do with them. I mean, it's familiar, right? But they think it's outside of them as a reality that exists in the world. But really it's something that's internally created as a part of perceiving from past experience. Like if you went to a party and something embarrassing happened, like you knocked over the drinks or something, the wine on the white rug, you know, and you wanted to make a good impression, and that clearly was not one. And frosted the host a bit, and you knew it was bad. And so the next time you choose to go to a party, if you weren't really very conscious of the connection, you might just say, I don't feel like going to a party. Parties are just a bunch of people being phony or something. And you wouldn't know in this particular case that it had to do with a reaction that had occurred in you that had never been fully experienced and accepted and dealt with, you know, and digested completely to where you felt at ease. So it gets projected, it gets overlaid onto situations. So when you think about it, I'm sure that my life is just full of that stuff. When my wife got pregnant, all of a sudden the world was populated by women, pregnant women.
That's what you started noticing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Before that, I never saw them. I didn't. Oh, once in a while, you know, I knew they existed, but there weren't very many. They weren't a part of my perceptual world. But when my wife got pregnant, suddenly I was tuned in, and they were all over the place. There were strollers going up and down. There's ladies with big bellies, and it's really amazing. We don't know about our perception. I think enlightenment has to do with coming to grips with those kinds of things and trying to understand the truth of our situation.
But isn't our perceptual world our truth?
Yeah. But
the way
what if it's an illusion?
Well, exactly. And in fact, oftentimes it is. Just when you were talking about how we're projecting our own things onto situations or other people, it's almost, I kind of think in a way that perhaps most people have post-traumatic stress disorder, even on very small levels. Something that might have happened to them even as a child, some context, some huge thing that altered the brain chemistry at that time that then set up a course of perception and behaving and feeling that they were never really conscious of, but perhaps, you know, miserable their whole life, or perhaps even the other extreme, not blissful their whole life because of what their perceptions, how their perceptions had been established.
Right. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And there's an interesting second order phenomena, like if I'm messed up, my perceptions are a mix of all sorts of things that happen in my past. And I then am projecting that on you. Then I'm seeing you in a certain way that you're not really. And this makes you feel like you're not with me. We're not together. Because I'm seeing somebody
I could feel this. Are you saying I could feel this just intuitively, or I could be intellectualizing this, or both?
You could observe it, right? You could intellectualize. You could observe it that this person just doesn't get you.
Because I think that's what happens in relationships with people, and even in love relationships.
Absolutely,
I hear that all the time. You know, he doesn't see me. She doesn't get me. She doesn't understand me.
So there's this experience of being separate from this other person, because this person is overlaying their perception of you. And it's not just your eyes, it's the whole, it's all the channels we have. The eyes was just an example. It's all the channels we have for connecting with each other.